Welcome to Sunday afternoon on the Mississippi State University campus. Yes, it's a Sunday, not a Saturday, Steve. Due to circumstances, we were not able to talk post-game, and that's probably for the best because a lot of emotions were flying high, both good and bad, after Mississippi State's 35-34 victory over Louisiana Tech. A dramatic win, probably a little more stressful than necessary in a lot of senses, but a win is a win. We've learned never to make fun of coming away with a W when the Bulldogs play.
No, there's no doubt about that. I mean, here's the thing. There are some things to be happy about, and there's some things to be unhappy about. I mean, the bottom line is, yes, Mississippi State won the ball game, and that's the most important thing. Because you lose that ball game, you're chasing the season the rest of the year. Right. I mean, and we know this is a team that's going to have to really play well to get a bowl game. I mean, you're probably a 7-5 type team. And yet yesterday at times they looked better than that, and then in the middle of quarters they looked worse than that. And turnovers were a major factor, really for both teams. State got the quick start, benefiting from a couple of Louisiana Tech turnovers, but a couple of State's turnovers were just inexplicable. And, when Will Rogers throws the pick six, a lot of Mississippi State fans packed it in and went home, but thankfully the Bulldogs didn't.
No, they didn't go home, and they came back and played the best fourth quarter, obviously, in quite some time, including any of the wins last year. That fourth quarter was impressive. You mentioned Will Rogers, 10 of 10 passing in the fourth quarter alone. And something I noted in the story on it, whereas the rest of the game he averaged about 7 yards per catch, in the fourth quarter it was almost 13 yards per catch. They threw different types of balls. Yes, I think Louisiana Tech got tired. You pointed that out last night. We wore them down simply by the game lasting so long. Yes, Louisiana Tech handed State some chances by throwing the ball and not letting the clock run in the fourth quarter. Bottom line, though, is Mike Leach's team, when they had to, pulled off a pretty impressive comeback. Again, Louisiana Tech, now let's give them credit too. They had a whole bunch of graduate transfers and other seniors that made them an entirely different team. I think they'll be a force in Conference USA. By the same token, State got a scare, but they survived it.
Yeah, and let's be fair, too. Louisiana Tech is a better team than I think most of us expected. Sure. And the line certainly leads you to believe that it should be a blowout. And quite simply, State should have won that game more handily than they did. But, give Tech a lot of credit. And the play calling late in the ball game, I know a lot of people say, well, they did the football. Skip Holtz and those guys play to win. And I don't begrudge them that because they really struggled to run the football against this Bulldog defense, with the exception of the 3rd and 3 play where you ran the zone read and you're bringing the safeties to try to jam it up there. Next thing you know, he breaks outside contain and the middle of the field's wide open. He runs it for a touchdown. Really had a lot of Bulldog fans kind of on their heels a little bit. But I did think, as you mentioned in the fourth quarter, when the game was on the line, the Bulldog offensive line played their best football of the day. They really struggled at times in the first half. We talked before we went on air today is that not a single pre-snap penalty on the line in the second half. You had the one sack that led to a strip fumble, and that's just Charles Cross getting beat by a guy out there. And listen, Charles Cross is a first-round talent. Did he show it in every snap last night? No, he didn't. But when you drop back to pass, 50-some-odd times, you're going to take some sacks, and Bulldog fans need to go ahead and kind of get accustomed to that. You're going to have pressure on the quarterback.
Well, part of that, too, is I noticed on the replays a couple of those times where maybe not a sack, but a pressure or a tackle behind the line. It wasn't so much the tackles as the guard play and the tackle play was not – they didn't really have a good communication of who was doing what, and some things slipped through. That's going to happen in the first game. You hate that it happened against a Conference USA team, but better to be exposed now than certainly this coming week against an ACC team. Again, the line picked it up the fourth quarter. The defense really turned it on in the fourth quarter. That was what we expected from Zach Arnett's team, and they were tired. They played a whole bunch of game without a whole lot of substitutions, but they were able – Tyson Brown's sprint thrower showed up in that fourth quarter when that defense just teed off and came after Tech.
Yeah, you absolutely saw a difference in the strength and conditioning program in that fourth quarter. And Leach just kind of prided himself. We're going to own the fourth quarter. We're going to win the fourth quarter. And they had to. And thankfully they did. You mentioned the offensive line play. You got 4 starters in a new spot this year. Scott Lashley at right tackle. I really thought he played pretty well yesterday. And all through camp I said he was the one question mark I had on the line. LaQuinson Sharp didn't roll a single snap back there. Exactly. Thought he was solid. Dollar Bill Johnson had some struggles at times, especially with the bull rush to the inside, and getting flagged for a couple holding calls. But the reality of it is you got 4 guys that are in a new spot. And if you are an experienced coaching staff, and Louisiana Tech is, what do you do with a group that's learning cohesion? You send confusion, you run stunts, you run twists, you make those guys communicate and pass guys off. At times, State did pretty well, but early in the ball game, they struggled with that. And I thought Charles Cross, especially when Tech would basically kind of go to the old Joe Lee Dunn prowler package, just have guys out there wandering around a little bit, not really getting a firm hand in the ground. they bring the quarterback, the linebacker on the loop, get around the backside, and you get pressure on Will Rogers. At times, that's on Will. Other times, it's on the offensive line. But they are a unit. It's never about one personnel group that does a good job and one that doesn't. But I thought our wide receivers really showed they had some talent. Mekhi Polka transfer with 10 grabs yesterday. Jameer Calvin with a really nice catch and run on a really nice slip screen there. So I think the pieces are there for this offense to be good. And in fact, you put up 35 points. I think it lends itself to thinking this offense should be better this year.
Let's touch briefly on the defense again. I thought they did some really interesting things with Tyrus Sweet. They would line him up between the tackles. They'd put him on outside. They'd let him take the long way towards the backfield, put him immediately there to crash the running back. Some of the things they did were really creative on the defensive side up front. And State got through with no injuries, which is a very key thing at this part of the season too, because while we feel like there'll be some depth in the defense, right now you're going to ride that first unit. So, when the defense had to play, they played. They got caught out of time a few times in the second quarter, particularly when that first touchdown pass. I think they really thought that they were going to run the clock out and didn't realize Tech was trying to run a play. Some things they will learn from. But back on the offensive side, let's mention special teams as well. Even though he missed one field goal, Brandon Ruiz comes through when he has to with his points. Punting was solid. Punt coverage was solid. Tulu Griffin. Why do you kick to Tulu Griffin? Thank goodness they did in the fourth quarter.
Well, you would think that they've seen film of the Armed Forces Bowl where he won the most valuable player of the bowl game, but what a weapon he can be for State. And I really like when we ran the wide receiver screen with him late in the ball game. Probably an underappreciated fact from the game is the wide receivers blocked exceptionally well on the perimeter, and Tulu is fast enough. Just give him a little bit of a seam, and next thing you know, it's a chunk play. But kind of back to the defense too, David. Zach Arnett, one of the most talented defensive coordinators in the country, he will get it right. Yeah, he will absolutely get it right.
Or somebody will regret it very much in that meeting room.
Well, it's just like a kid at first touchdown you referenced, Emmanuel Forbes. Arguably State's best defensive player. He gets beat on a pretty basic pump and go there. Mm-hmm. And then you got a former SEC receiver that makes a catch and outruns everybody to the end zone. He'll be better for that experience. And a lot of times, too, guys, come out here and it's human nature to say, okay, well, this is a Conference USA team. And Leach kind of referenced that last night, too, is, we get a couple of scores up and it's like we're taking a victory lap. They're not too good to play a team like Louisiana Tech. And I agree with you. I think when we look back at the end of the year, if Tech can stay healthy, they will do a good job and they'll win some ball games. And was really impressed with Kendall. And that's a former Oklahoma signee that transferred to West Virginia that ends up at Louisiana Tech. And to their good fortune, the transfer portal has been very good to them, 19 transfers. And so, yeah, they probably ambushed State just a little bit. But I think a lot of this, too, boils down to State's inability to execute at times. Will Rogers, very good game statistically, did miss a couple throws, but he had 8 incompletions, and 4 of those were drops. And then one, of course, being the pick 6 there. So you like the fact that your quarterback knows where to go with the football. I think they'll build upon that, and he'll be better for it. But it's his best game as a collegiate player, and a lot of our fans are acting like Will Rogers probably should be benched or we should put some walk-on in at second-team quarterback. You ride the wave. That's what you do. You ride the wave and let the guy get better.
I'll admit that myself, I got a little passionate there in the second and third quarters when some of those pass plays were not connecting. Maybe he held the ball a while, and certainly he wasn't getting great protection there as well some periods. But we go back to that fourth quarter. I think the two things that maybe should give the most hope, maybe 2 facts. You mentioned the blocking. I think one of the key plays that last drive was just an 8-yard reception because Austin Williams and Jaden Wally got out and blocked their men cleanly to allow yards after the catch. That was missing all of last year. And now you see that all of a sudden you have a weapon. You don't have to settle for that check down across the middle, that 4 or 5 yard catch. But the other one, twice on that drive, Will Rogers went vertical. And that's been the question all along this summer. Would the strength program improve his arm? Would he have more downfield depth? That touchdown pass, he threaded it over one defender who leaped and put it between 2 others. There were at least 4 Louisiana Tech guys in the flight path of that ball, and he put it there to a wide-open receiver. He couldn't throw that pass last year. Now he's throwing that pass, and the preceding pass, the long gainer over into the right flat to a wide-open receiver. He picked the guy up. Yes, Louisiana Tech was getting tired, as we mentioned, and maybe a little stressed. But Will Rogers made passes we didn't see from him last year in the half-season that he played as a true freshman.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, David. But also, too, just kind of looking at what Will does over the course of the ball game. In the second quarter, Tech did a great job kind of disguising coverages. They show a 4-3 cover 2. All of a sudden, you get your pre-snap read, you snap it, and next thing you know, there's 8 guys back there in coverage. And I did think State actually handled the drop 8 a lot better yesterday than they have. You look at the big offensive games last year, LSU, Mizzou, where they try to run a lot of man coverage. Tech tried to run some yesterday, too. Jaden Wiley beats them on a crosser. Mekhi Polk beats them on a crosser. And so when State had those opportunities, I thought they took advantage of them. But they're going to continue to see a lot of drop 8, which opens the door for Dylan Johnson and Zaquavius Marks. I thought Marks was outstanding yesterday. I didn't think DJ had a great game, especially early on. Ran hard in the second half. But, he had a big drop early in the ball game. Of course, had the fumble. I still think the thing was out.
A very dubious call.
Well, his elbows were down. And what makes it worse is, number one, I think you've probably got the SEC's E or F crew calling this game, and then they review it. They make the wrong call on the field. The linesman rules it second down, and then the field judge comes in and overrules them. They rule it a fumble, recovered in bounds, and then they review it. And because of the fact that there was a lot of ambiguity, I guess, with the review, it looked, is his knee down, is his elbow down? To me, it looked clearly like his elbows were down. But the bottom line is, you don't fumble the football, you don't have to worry about that. And I'm sure that's the point that Mike Leach will drive home today.
In the long run, you may say that maybe the game playing out the way it did will serve the Bulldogs better as they learn from a really tough scare that they got. Yes, you'd have liked to have been a lot more comfortable. You'd have liked to see the other guys play. I wanted to see Hargrove play at running back. I want to see if he's got the speed that has been displayed in camp out there, and maybe he should have gotten a chance, but he didn't. Of course, we didn't see Malik Heath yesterday, and we didn't see DeMonte Russell on defensive end, some depth there. Coach will not say why, and we don't want to write about it because the fact is fans will start assuming that anybody who is not playing is serving some kind of either discipline or injury, and this is a coach who's not going to comment on either, so we don't want to feed that fire. Sometimes a guy doesn't play just because he's not going to play, so we have to avoid the temptation to fall into that as well. But the fact is, you expect to get Heath back shortly. That's another weapon in the receiver corps, which you mentioned is much improved. Now we've seen Will Rogers throw some vertical passes. I know the fans want to see the young quarterbacks out there, so do I. But right now, the best chance Mississippi State has to win against a good ACC team who has a solid win the other night in North Carolina State is to have their second-year starter out there with a better receiving corps, offensive line do their job, and the defense get back to playing 4 quarters of Zach Arnett defense.
Well, the bottom line is there's nobody more beloved on this campus than the backup quarterback. And I guess even when Dak was here, people forget we had this revisionist history. People forget how bad Dak's accuracy was, especially as a junior. And he would take some chances with the football. But, hey, let's put this kid in. Let's put in Fitzgerald. The way that Will Rogers gets better is to get game reps. The way that he gets better is to take reps with the ones. And you mentioned Malik Heath, and he is Mississippi State's most physical receiver. And, yeah, I think you missed him a little bit yesterday, but that's the best thing about this group is you've got so much depth. If you are down a receiver, the offense doesn't have to shut down. And, again, offensively, at times they showed some real flashes. Now it's about finding some consistency. As you mentioned, NC State, we're not going to be able to go to sleep for 2 quarters against the Wolfpack. They're not a great ACC team, but they're going to be a very good bowl team. We're going to have to play a lot better to win that ball game, and that's the thing, too, about football. You find a way to win that one, and all of a sudden this performance on Saturday doesn't seem quite so bad.
Exactly. So tomorrow, Coach Leach will have his regular press conference on Monday, despite being the holiday, but that'll be at 2 o'clock. More or less. So we will listen to what Coach has. Mike Nemeth will have a transcript of what Leach has to say. We'll look for some stories. You and I will talk about what he has to say there and then start getting ready for North Carolina State, Steve. But despite the scare, the big thing is the Bulldogs are 1-0, which is exactly what they thought to be at this point. Did a little harder than maybe they necessary, but in the long run, some harsh lessons will remind them that you can't take anyone for granted in this game. And now they're up against a team that you certainly can't take for granted in North Carolina State coming to campus. 6 o'clock this coming weekend. Tickets remain available. And let us stress also the mini-pack tickets remain available. And this is one heck of a mini-pack when you have Kentucky, which will be the game where the National Baseball Championship will be recognized. Can't ever stress that enough. Mississippi State, national champions, yes. Omaha belongs to the Bulldogs. And then LSU and the Egg Bowl in that pack as well. Also coming up this week, we'll have some practice observations Tuesday and Wednesdays, post-practice reports with players and coaches, and part 2s and part 3s of my interview with Dr. Mark Keenum. Part 1 ran on Friday talking about game week, but he has some very interesting comments to make about both the impact of name, image, likeness of the transfer portal on Mississippi State, on the SEC and college football, the future of the NCAA or not, as he's pretty frank about. And then we'll talk about the college football playoff expansion, which he is the chairman of the board of managers of the committee this coming year. So we're getting it straight from the top as far as some of these big stories outside college football. So, Steve, we'll be talking about tomorrow, and good to see you, and our best wishes that everybody gets healthy at home.
Thank you very much, David, and I appreciate all the support from everybody. And it's good to get back to a football schedule for us, because things are kind of regimented. You get Leach on Monday, and you mentioned the player opportunities Tuesday, Wednesday. Next thing you know, you're right back on this beautiful campus again, getting ready to ring a cowbell and enjoy some college football. But we've waited a long time. I tell you, the thing about it is, David, I joked with some friends of mine a while back about one of the best things about being a Mississippi State fan in recent years is we just don't get a break. I mean, we've always got something to cheer for. We get back 4th of July weekend after Omaha, and next thing you know, we're in the fall camp. And I think Bulldog fans could probably get a little accustomed to that, which reminds me of one other thing, too. The crowd yesterday. Those of you that were here, and it wasn't a capacity crowd, but those of you that were here, I thought provided a really good atmosphere.
They were loud, and there was a lot of cowbells in the stands yesterday.
There were, and I really thought down the stretch, even after a lot of people had left, those that remained did a great job kind of giving the team a lift. So to all of you, salute, and thanks for being Bulldogs.
And we'll be talking tomorrow. We'll also have our reports from Robbie Falk, Paul Jones, and Mike Nemeth, and our full Genes Page 24/7 staff. Until then, enjoy your Sunday evening, and more college football coming on tonight, tomorrow as well. So it's football season. We're back in action, and we're glad to be talking to you, the Dogs Bite reader.